Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jared Stearns. I'm the communications manager at the Tenderloin Museum and the person behind the social media for San Francisco Film Preserve. I'm really excited and honored to help host this month's edition of Online with SFFP, a free monthly virtual series produced by San Francisco Film Preserve. There are more episodes of Online with SFFP on our YouTube channel, so please head over there and hit the like and subscribe buttons. I know everyone says that, but it really does help with the algorithm and get the video out to a wider audience. With the Tenderloin Museum. The Tenderloin Museum is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. And we're in the midst of an exciting expansion project and tripling our size. So we've secured a new 6,800 square foot historic space adjacent to our current location, which is at the corner of Eddy and Leavenworth, if you're in San Francisco. And that will allow us to create a cultural anchor that will play a pivotal role in revitalizing both the Tenderloin and San Francisco as a whole. And it will continue our mission to share rich and complicated, but often surprising history of the Tenderloin neighborhood. We produce public programming almost every week, most of it free or with a suggested donation. And you can see what's coming up at tenderloinmuseum.org. Please stop in and visit the museum Tuesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. We also offer walking tours every Saturday at 2 p.m. We don't have a film themed one just yet, but we're working on something. The Tenderloin has always been a crossroads of art, nightlife, activism, and culture. And as you'll hear today, it also played a remarkable role in the film history. San Francisco Film Preserve is a program partner of ours, and today's presentation actually grew out of a wonderful collaboration earlier this year when the museum screened two Buster Keaton shorts at the Great American Music Hall, a concert venue in the Tenderloin. One of the shorts was filmed in San Francisco and featured live musical accompaniment by the Clubfoot Quintet and support from SF Neon and historical context from Kathy Rosa Reagan, Executive Director of San Francisco Film Preserve. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Kathy Rosa Reagan. She, as I said, is the Executive Director of the San Francisco Film Preserve, a researcher, historian, and champion of preserving the city's film heritage. Today, she'll be taking us through the silent film era exchange, the Tenderloin, the networks that powered the movie houses along Market Street and helped shape San Francisco's early film culture. So, Kathy, take it away.
Thank you, Jared. Really appreciate you hosting today. It's been wonderful to see you on screen. All right, so I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, share and all right, okay. So to get things started, the film exchanges of the Tenderloin. Okay, so before we get started, I want to play a short video for you. So this is a compilation highlighting scenes filmed in or around the Tenderloin during the era we are about to discuss, which is the silent era, which ran from roughly 1895 through 1927. We open with footage shot by the Miles brothers, which they filmed in the direct aftermath of the 1906 earthquake. The majority of this footage, as you can see, is the destruction of the remainders of buildings following this devastating event. And then here is some hand-colored travelogue footage filmed in the city in 1925. This footage highlighted different areas of the city for potential tourists, but these few clips are just in or around Market Street and the Tenderloin neighborhood. And then these final sequences come from a feature film called The Last Edition, which was made here in the city in 1925 and was set at the San Francisco Chronicle, which, for those of you who may not be aware, is still our paper of record. Much of it was also shot inside the Chronicle building. It's a fantastic film. And this footage can be seen on our website, filmpreserve.org. If you would like to watch this whole feature with a score, it is available on our website. But now, on to the presentation itself. San Francisco's film roots are in the Tenderloin. This town, so well known on film for its steep hills, its terrifying prison, its jaw-dropping vistas, its hippie happenings, started its filmic life on the much maligned streets of Hyde, Turk, and Golden Gate. Why, you might ask? What does this small corner of the city have to do with bullets flight over hilltops or Connery and Cage's tangle with the rock? To explain that, we've got to go back a ways, back almost to the very beginning of the film trade, back to my personal area of expertise, the silent era. Film first went into motion in the 1890s, with film running through a projector for the very first time in either the United States or France, depending on who you ask. It took off as a form of entertainment almost immediately. These early days of cinema were wild, unregulated, and thrilling. The four Miles brothers, famous today for A Trip Down Market Street, filmed right before the 1906 earthquake, began their careers as photographers. They spent stretches of time in Alaska shooting the otherworldly environs of this most remote state and screening the results for intrigued crowds in the lower 48. Savvy businessmen, they followed the development of motion pictures with interest and soon saw a better way of making a living, the film rental business. When moving pictures first became popular, Nickelodeons, the predecessors of cinemas as we know them, and other exhibitors were required to purchase film reels from producers. This was an expensive undertaking, especially considering the limited earning potential of a single movie. Once an audience had seen a film, there was little interest in rewatching a movie, so the reels exhibitors purchased at hefty prices could barely turn a profit. Entrepreneurs like the Miles brothers didn't take long to see a prime opening in the burgeoning film market, rentals. If a rental business built up a stock of films, it could rent these titles to multiple theatres at a rate cheaper than the theatres had to shell out when purchasing films outright from producers. Sorry, there's an ambulance going by. Anyways, I'm just going to let it pass. It's really loud. San Francisco. Anyways, unsurprisingly, this business model of renting films took off immediately. The Miles brothers were not necessarily the first to see the need for a film rental business in San Francisco. It's been claimed one Peter Bacigalupi, Edison's man on the ground in San Francisco, had this idea previous to the Miles, while there's also some speculation that an Anthony Lubeski operated an exchange before the Miles brothers began operations in 1903. Nonetheless, the Miles were the biggest name in this industry at the outset of film exchanges in the city. The brothers might have had one of the first film exchanges in San Francisco, but other industrious sorts were not long in following their lead. By 1914, there were already 21 exchanges advertising in San Francisco, primarily centered around the Tenderloin neighborhood due to its proximity to the large swath of theaters just around the corner on Market Street. Film exchanges began largely as extensions of existing businesses dealing with photographic technology such as stereoopticons, slides, and optical lenses. But with the incredible growth of the moving image industry, these businesses soon saw the merit in focusing exclusively on film rental. When Film Row, as it came to be known, first started developing in the Tenderloin, the film exchanges were not located in specialized buildings. They were in regular storefronts, often sharing space with other businesses. This was a less than ideal situation in that the film exchange's primary material, celluloid film, was made out of highly combustible nitrate. This extremely explosive ingredient made for a very flexible, durable film base. Kept in the correct conditions, nitrate film from the silent era can still roll through a projector easily today. There's even a nitrate film festival at the George Eastman Museum in Rochester, New York every year. However, if kept in the wrong conditions, hot, humid, exposed to igniting elements like, say, cigarettes, nitrate film could be, and unfortunately quite often was, highly explosive. No, not only is nitrate explosive, but once alight, it's nigh on impossible to quench, generating its own oxygen as it barrels through all in its path. While there was some awareness in this era of the risks associated with nitrate film, the industry had little to no time for such concerns, seeing fire worries as a largely foolish obstacle to the earning potential of their businesses. As early as 1909, there was a push by local authorities to regulate nitrate film, with the supervisor d'Ancona submitting an ordinance in October of that year requiring that moving image operators use non-inflammable films. This suggestion sparked uproar in the film community, with the Moving Picture Exhibition Association's lawyer pointing out rightly that there's no such thing as non-inflammable film, or well, there wasn't at that point in history. Local lawmakers were not the only ones with concerns about the flaunting of safety rules by film folk. In 1916, the Bureau of Explosives advised the Film Exchange Board of Trade of San Francisco that some exhibitors were carrying film in unsafe conditions on boats crossing the bay. The board was warned that a continued lack of observance of recently instituted safety rules around film transport would result in operators' transport permissions being revoked. Like every major city during the silent era, San Francisco's Film Row did suffer fires. On March 7th, 1911, a fire at the Variety Film Exchange at 51 McAllister completely destroyed the building, causing $20,000 worth of damage. A minor fire was recorded at the Fox Film Exchange in 1917 and was quickly brought under control. But it was the massive conflagration of 1922 that changed things on Film Row forever. On October 4th, at the Independent Film Corporation, the biggest film exchange fire ever recorded in San Francisco occurred, injuring 20 people and causing $500,000 worth of damage, which is the equivalent of $10 million today. This huge inferno burned over 3,000 reels of nitrate, according to the Film Exchange. The San Francisco Chronicle reported at the time that if this figure was correct, the burning reels would have had the same explosive power as 8,000 pounds of gun cotton. This massive fire included multiple explosions which shook the streets of the Tenderloin. No doubt the residents who remembered the horrors of 1906 were momentarily thrown into panic when the earth beneath their feet rumbled, recalling a time a short 16 years previous when their whole world collapsed around their ears. The fire and explosions drew a crowd of thousands, with the Chronicle describing the fire as follows. The fire was spectacular in the extreme. The burning films and chemicals created a dense smoke, extremely difficult and dangerous for the firemen to work in. The big searchlight on the Granada Theatre was put in operation and aided materially in helping the firemen to find their way about by concentrating its rays where the smoke was thickest. Reporting on the fire also gives some fascinating insight into the vibrancy and range of film-related businesses operating on Film Row at this time. The fire damaged or destroyed the following: the Independent Film Cooperative Company, the Hyde Hotel, Pacific Coast Rattan Works, Alta Studios, D.A. Metcalf Photo Supplies, the Western Poster Company, the Western Theatrical Supply Company, American Photo Players Corporation, a tailor, a barber shop, Sherman Clay & Co. storeroom for pipe organs, and my personal favorite, an eatery called Film Lunch. I would very much like to eat somewhere called Film Lunch. But I do think this list of businesses really illustrates the fact that this was a thriving film district in the 1920s, with the film industry supporting a huge array of workplaces. The fire also led to real change. Yes. Responses in the media were swift and furious, with an op-ed 2 days after the fire insisting that it was incumbent upon city supervisors to pass an adequate ordinance to prevent future such catastrophes in San Francisco. This time, there was no pushback from exchanges and exhibitors. By October 20th, just 2 weeks after the fire, the San Francisco Film Exchange Board of Trade had chosen a committee to study the city's proposed ordinance regulating the storage and handling of film, and to make suggestions for the same. On November 22nd, Bill number 6171 was introduced, regulating the manufacture, printing, developing, keeping, storage, or use of motion picture films in San Francisco, with the resulting ordinance voted on and approved on September 4th, exactly 2 months after the disaster. A number of requirements outlined in this ordinance would impact the way in which film exchange buildings would be constructed moving forward. For example, any person, film, or corporation desiring to manufacture, print, develop, store, keep, or use motion picture films in any building or place within the city and county of San Francisco shall file with the fire marshal a written application for a permit. The fire marshal shall frequently inspect all buildings or places containing motion picture films to determine whether the provisions of this ordinance are being complied with. All films, when not in use or not being worked upon, shall be kept in approved shipping cases or individually enclosed metal containers with tight covers, and shall be stored in fireproof vaults, and walls and floors of vaults shall be of brick or reinforced concrete. While it appears that some film exchanges had already built their facilities to a standard similar to the one now legally enforceable, this ordinance made fire-safe construction a must. Of course, safety did not necessarily exclude beauty. Film exchanges didn't have to look appealing, but in this era of stunning architectural design, it behooved competitive businesses to catch the eye. The most impressive exchanges were designed by a small handful of architects. Primary among them was Alfred Schroepfer, who was responsible for the design of all 7 of the film exchanges real estate magnate Louis Orluri built in the Tenderloin between 1920 and 1922. Considered an authority on French period architecture, Schroepfer's film exchange buildings shared many facets. All were of concrete construction for purposes of fire safety, and they featured arches, cast masks in frieze, pilaster order, and Renaissance Baroque ornamentation. We are lucky to still be able to see many of these decorative elements on the remaining facades in the Tenderloin today. A striking example of film exchange architecture of the silent era stands at 134 Golden Gate Avenue. Designed in 1917 by the Weeks and Day architectural firm, this building's stylish, sleek arches and striking flourishes bring to mind a far more famous local landmark designed by the same firm, the stunning Fox Oakland Theatre. One of the most impressively ornate film exchange exteriors still intact today is that of 125 Hyde Street. Designed in 1925 by Andrew H. Knoll, this gorgeous facade features a stepped parapet with decorative cast panels and modern ornamentation. As stated by San Francisco Planning, this is one of a few small Art Deco buildings in this immediate area, which was once in the heart of a thriving theatre supply district. Art Deco was not as widely employed in SF as in other cities, which makes these buildings rarities. Nevertheless, this and the others relate well to their more classically derived neighbours in both scale and proportion of design features. It's amazing how easy it is to walk down the streets of the Tenderloin and never notice the history just above us. The delights to be found with a simple head tilt are extraordinary. The remaining decorative medallions on the former Pathé building at 333 Turk alone are sure to bring anyone who spots them at least a little smile. Not to mention the imposing gazes of the huge tragedy and comedy masks still surveying Hyde Street from their perches on the old Fox building, or the MGM lions forever gazing down on us from the previous abode of the MGM exchange at the corner of Hyde and Eddy. The film exchanges of the Tenderloin have been recognised by the National Record of Historic Places, which describes the uptown Tenderloin district as a largely intact, visually consistent, inner city, high density residential area constructed during the years between the earthquake and fire of 1906 and the Great Depression, and refers to the film exchanges as follows. In addition, there are a few building types that are not directly related to the residential neighbourhood: machine shops, office buildings, union halls, and film exchanges. While not necessarily related to residential life, the film exchanges are related to the overlay of entertainment businesses in around the neighbourhood. The exchanges were also assessed as part of the 1974 to 76 citywide architectural survey of San Francisco, with some elements of their architecture classed as good examples of particular modes of design. So now that I've talked a little about the physical exchanges themselves, I wanted to touch on the reach and influence of the men running these businesses, and they did seem to be exclusively men in the upper reaches of the organizations. The operators of the Tenderloin film exchanges were well-recognized members of San Francisco's social scene. They were reported on regularly in local publications. This picture, featured in the Chronicle in September 1929, features Universal Film Exchange's manager, W.J. Heineman, showing off his car of the month to pretty Miss Ted Courthill. This light article suggests that film exchange men, as they were called at the time, were suitably high profile in the community to warrant such light-hearted pieces in the paper of record. In another show of the standing and respectability of film exchanges, in July 1923, numerous film exchanges extended their greetings to visiting President Harding in this full-page ad. I was also delighted to see that the Metaphysical Library added their name to this greeting. Apparently, the library held noon talks daily on the power of the mind, more proof that San Francisco has always been a place for those thinking outside the box. The actions of the exchange men were also heavily recorded in trade papers, such as Moving Picture World, which noted births, deaths, changes of employment, and social interactions, as well as reporting on the inner workings of not only the exchanges themselves, but also the San Francisco Film Exchange Board of Trade. On more than one occasion, Moving Picture World highlighted a San Francisco film exchange man. When highlighting Leon Netter, first assistant of Saul Lesser of the Golden Gate Film Exchange, they were quick to point out his striking resemblance to actor Sidney Grant. You can decide for yourself if they had a point, but I kind of think they both just have the same mustache. Anyways. Netter's boss, Saul Lesser, was an extremely interesting figure and born and bred in San Francisco. At the age of 17, or possibly 20, depending on which reporting you believe, the young Saul Lesser opened the Union Nickelodeon in the Mission. He began collecting cast-off junk reels and renting them to other exhibition houses from the back room of his Nickelodeon. And within a few short years, he had developed this ad hoc setup into the fully fledged Golden Gate Film Exchange. Following some very savvy decision making on the part of this young entrepreneur, Saul Lesser was leading one of the country's most prominent film exchanges by the age of 24. He moved into film production in 1922 and ended up producing more than 100 titles, including the Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan films. He also shot a film that any archivist would be thrilled to uncover. In 1913, he heard that the cops were shutting down San Francisco's notorious Barbary Coast. Lesser grasped this golden opportunity to document the final throes of the city's most notorious neighborhood and rushed down there with a camera to film everything he could. The resulting film, Last Night of the Barbary Coast, was extremely successful, but sadly is now considered lost. Also, in reality, the Barbary Coast wasn't completely dissolved until 4 years later in 1917, but I bet Saul's film still made for great viewing. Speaking of the more illicit history of this town of ours, I have some reporting for all the doom loopers out there, or more specifically on the internet, who are quite convinced that San Francisco has become a seething pit of crime and debauchery lately. But let me assure you all, we have always been notorious and proud of it. The film exchanges were no strangers to tales of ill repute. That fire in 1922 I told you about that caused so much damage, there was suspicion at the time that it was sparked by an illegal still in the basement of the building, cashing in on that good prohibition money, no doubt. A few other examples from Film Row over 100 years ago. Going back to nearly the beginning of the existence of film exchanges in San Francisco, in 1909, a warrant was issued for one Arthur F. Galindo, accused by the California Film Exchange of embezzlement of a moving picture machine worth $125 and four reels of film worth a whopping $325, worth $11,667 today. In 1910, a moving image man's marital problems made the news when A.J. Clapham, the manager of two local film exchanges, was jailed for contempt of court for reneging on alimony payments. Clapham argued, however, that he didn't in fact owe alimony because he believed his wife was in fact already married at the time of their union. In 1918, a number of San Francisco exchanges were victims of an organized thief who made away with reels from various prominent exchanges. But when the suspect heard tell that the cops were onto him, he folded and sent a letter to an exchange telling them where the films could be found. But my own personal favorite tale of intrigue from this era is the one of Mrs. Dell Fowler. Poor Mrs. Fowler was arrested on charges of grand larceny and malicious mischief after chasing her husband Edward, proprietor of the Ideal Film Exchange, down the fire escape of the Atherton apartment building. The arrest came on the foot of a complaint by Miss Trixie Leslie after Mrs. Fowler found Trixie in the apartment with Mr. Fowler. Trixie accused Mrs. Fowler of assault, taking her fur coat, dress, and letters, and, in a particularly nasty move, of slashing Trixie's hats with a penknife. Mrs. Fowler, on the other hand, said that she was merely taking the woman's clothes to be used as evidence in a proposed divorce trial. One other news report that does bear repeating, as I think it speaks to just how messy people are regardless of the era, is the tale of C.C. Thompson of Pathé Film Exchange and Miss Cora Melville. In February 1923, this young couple woke Justice of the Peace W.M. Bird at 3 a.m. following a party the night before. After being teased at this party for being the only singletons there, Thompson and Melville decided to prove their fellow revelers wrong by getting married post haste. They took off to Justice Byrd's place, stopping just long enough to snatch up Deputy County Clerk Clement Nash to issue them a marriage license, then tied the knot with a sleepy Justice Byrd officiating. Apparently, the two had met 1 year before in the film booking offices of America. Okay, so I have talked about what the Tenderloin's Fulham Row was like 100 years ago, but you might be wondering what happened to the exchange buildings between the silent era and today. Like so much of San Francisco, this part of the city's history is storied. 245 Hyde Street might have the most impressive history from a pop cultural perspective. After housing the film exchanges of Fox, RKO, and Gaumont, it became the famed Wally Heider recording studio in 1969, where Jefferson Airplane, The Grateful Dead, Creedence Clearwater Revival, and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young recorded. The studio later became Hyde Street Studios, who have recorded the likes of Cake, Earth, Wind and Fire, and the Pope of Trash himself, John Waters. The history of the exchange buildings also intersects with the history of the queer community in the Tenderloin. 177 Golden Gate Avenue once served as a film exchange, while in the 90s it housed the Department of Public Health's Tenderloin AIDS Resource Center, serving transgender, AIDS, and HIV patients. The Tenderloin Clinic, a support organization for the queer community, was once located in the former RKO exchange, while the Committee for Homosexual Freedom was situated at 148 Leavenworth. A number of the other film exchange buildings now house organizations providing care and support for city residents in need. Hospitality House, the Homeless Advocacy Project, Larkin Street Youth Services, and the Curry Senior Centre now reside in old film exchange properties, carrying on the legacy of charity and care established in the Tenderloin in its earliest days. As Peter M. Field notes in his A History of the Tenderloin Through Time, before the 1906 earthquake, many charitable organizations, such as the Eureka Benevolent Society and free medical clinics, were located in the Tenderloin, while a YMCA was founded at Golden Gate and Leavenworth in 1910, and a Salvation Army residence for women was opened on McAllister in 1924. Another former exchange now houses the San Francisco offices of the Unite Here Union. I like to think that this would bring the film exchange staffs a lot of joy, as they were proudly unionized. The charter of the Film Exchange Operators Union was admitted to the American Federation of Labor in December 1917, at which time a conference with the managers of film exchanges resulted in a substantial increase in wages and the establishment of a minimum weekly wage of $12.50 for women workers. So at the start of this presentation, I suggested that there is a direct through line from the Tenderloin's Film Row to the world-renowned on-screen versions of San Francisco we all know so well, and I stand by that. Without film exchanges, the wide, broad, and crucially, affordable screening of film would never have been possible. These resourceful film exchange pioneers saw the exceptional promise in the market of moving images, and their dive into the gold mine that was the early days of cinema ensured affordable, widespread access to movies, not only in the Tenderloin, but countrywide. So the next time you go to the movies, and please do go to the movies, spare a thought for the folks of the Tenderloin's Film Row, who slung movies for punters in the very heart of our beloved city over 100 years ago. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. That was a fantastic presentation.
Oy. So,
Does anyone have any questions?
and the Tenderloin Museum is right around the corner from really all of the film exchanges. So if you are in the neighborhood, look up would be my recommendation.
I wish they were open to the public, like Hyde Street Studios, which is still in operation today, and in a film exchange building. Sadly, it isn't, because it is an operating recording studio, which is amazing, but
Yeah.
I'd love to be able to peek inside there. And all of those places that you mentioned, the Hospitality House, the Curry Senior, are also program partners of the Tenderloin Museum too.
Oh,
So
great. Okay.
it is it's there's a community, that you mentioned, a community of charity and caring that I think goes unnoticed in certainly in the media, the mainstream media.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely,
Um,
because I mean, for non-Bay Area residents who might not be as well aware of our city, I mean, the Tenderloin is just constantly used as a punching bag in the media, which is, deeply vile when it is, you know, people who are at the lowest ebb in their lives. And there are so many organizations at Tenderloin who are working tirelessly, volunteering often, or for very low pay, trying to help people in all of the ways that they can. And there should be more recognition of that rather than punching down on people suffering on our streets.
Absolutely. And we're not the only city with, people on the streets, and it happens in every major city in America. It's just we get all the attention. But
It's
it's
it's because we're the best
it's
place for
still
it. It's jealousy.
I think it is, yeah. And I think thank you for dropping in. Someone dropped in a note about
Oh,
the
Seattle's old exchanges. That's
It was
fantastic.
really cool. It also makes me wonder what other, did Portland have one, or were there other places on the West Coast or west of the Mississippi that had film exchanges, or, how did they, uh, how did
Yeah, I mean
Chicago?
it was completely countrywide, and Rob just asked if there was other exchanges in the Bay or if San Francisco served everywhere. I know there was ones in the East Bay, definitely. My research was very specifically about San Francisco, but often they would like refer to exchanges in the East Bay as well, kind of like different partners or the same representatives from the same organizations. But I do, from what I saw about other parts of the country, it does seem like cities were the hubs of distribution. But I couldn't tell. Like I have been asked in the past if smaller towns had exchanges, and I believe the cities were used as the hubs for distribution within a region.
That sounds like it makes the most sense. I don't know that there were small towns that had major film exchanges. I could be wrong,
Yeah.
but it's interesting to note too how powerful these people were and how they were covered in the media of the era, the film exchange men. Because it's there's no such business line of business anymore, and
Right.
I like was there it was all their media attention later replaced by the studio heads like Jack Warner and Louis B. Mayer
Yeah.
because they were, as powerful, but even more powerful because they were in Hollywood, and they kind of took the place of all the film exchange.
Yeah. And
Um,
it is really interesting how many like the studios had so many representatives that did become parts of like social scenes in the community because recently I was researching for a different presentation on underwater cinematography and I was looking at the different sorts of advertising campaigns that were done throughout the country about these, films that had underwater cinematography. And so often they would mention the studio men by name. Now they weren't the exchange men, they were the advertising men, but they were working like in tandem with different local theaters to do big advertising events, but they were obviously known quantities within the communities. It's really fascinating because now, I mean, I'm sure like Universal or Paramount has somebody who like works in the Bay Area about, we're all in the film
who
scene and
knows
we
who
don't
they
know who those
are?
people
Yeah,
are. It's just
yeah,
we work in
and
such a different media today.
and how it's changed in a relatively short amount of time, like in 100 years, how it's just gone from this, how the business model has changed, how we consume the entertainment has changed, the medium has changed. It's really remarkable. It's one of the reasons I love film, but especially that era, the silent film era, and the golden age of Hollywood, because it's just they don't make them like that anymore.
Which in some ways is positive, depending on what bit of it you're looking
I
at.
mean, yeah, that's true. That's true. But I mean, like you look at all uh the magnificence of special effects of the era that now it's all done on a computer, and it really makes you appreciate the time and care
Yeah,
of
the
filmmaking.
practicality.
Yeah, to make something look so good, which was evident in the two Buster Keaton shorts that we screened at the Great American Music Hall, because his films, of course, are just rife with special effects,
Mhm.
just eye-popping special effects.
They're
And
just more impressive if you know the person could have actually died, right? You know, that's what
absolutely.
makes it
Oh,
good.
man. And all but the poor animals in some of these like battle scenes, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh
Best to not think about what
yeah.
happened.
I think that horse broke its leg, so I think we know what
Yes,
happened.
indeed.
Um, well, I don't know if there are any.
There's a few questions in the chat, I think. So, okay. So Mary Mallory, did the early studio sell films to them in the states' rights period, which they then rented out to exhibitors? So, this is a new area of study for me. So again, I was very specifically just kind of looking at the exchanges in the Tenderloin in the silent era. But from what I could understand, yes, in early cinema the studios were all, and I mean the thing is like in very early cinema it wasn't even necessarily studios, sometimes it was just, or they were studios but they were like small independent little organizations were selling films directly, and then the rental model started. I mean it started pretty quickly, like 1903 is the first record of an exchange in the city. And then Steve Dalton is wondering when the exchanges quit operating. Again, I don't want to say that I know for sure, but I believe I saw reporting about them up to like the 30s and 40s, I think, but it really just became a thing that the studios were so huge that they were doing their own distribution. They had all of their own, movie chains by the 30s and 40s. So,
Yeah, they own the
exchange
theaters.
became kind of redundant. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Um, Great. Well, if there are no other, oh no, there's more questions. Yay. Uh, Throughout Northern California. I think, yeah, that was the previous questions is largely the Bay Area, which would include, I assume,
Yeah, I don't know if it extended as far as Reading or Humboldt, but I mean, certainly possibly, but I'm from Ireland. I don't know what the centers of population were in 1910, but
yeah, and also
yeah,
how they would get the roads and
yeah,
uh, of getting someplace like to the wine country, to Napa. But did that even have a movie theater back then? I don't know. So
yeah,
yeah, but presumably I would say the San Francisco served the Bay Area and most of Northern California.
indeed. Well, yeah.
Well,
Um, Wonder if we found any evidence of screening rooms in these beautiful buildings, or did they show the films in local cinemas? Yeah, so that is a great question from my countrywoman, Veronica. Yeah, so the exchanges were specifically for serving cinemas, but I did read when there was some when I read some reporting on new exchanges that were being built, particularly by the studios, they would often have like a small screening room if they wanted to review a print if there was a problem with it, or but they weren't screening rooms for the public. They were just a screening room to make sure that their merchandise was in good condition.
God, and then you wonder what happened to all of it when they
Mhm.
closed.
I
Oh,
know. Yeah.
makes my heart sink when thinking about all especially the silent era stuff that is mostly lost now.
Yeah.
What did they just throw away? That's too sad to think about. We'll
I know. Well, I like to focus on what we still have. It's
absolutely.
it
Yeah.
was always intended to be an ephemeral medium. We're lucky in many ways that we even have the 25% of American silent cinema that we do. And most countries have exponentially less than that. Like you look at India, which has had a massive film industry from the earliest days, and they have, I think there's 6 titles from the silent era that still exist, so yeah, we're lucky that, we had at least regions here and archives here that were able to maintain nitrate film.
Yeah. And they're still being discovered,
Yeah, this
all
is the thing. Stuff is
those are
being found all the
great,
time.
great. I love those stories when they're just found in an attic or
Yeah.
found in a junkyard and then you realize what you have,
Attics and basements of the world.
right? Like the pill pounder
Yeah.
wasn't that found in a junkyard?
Yes, it was literally, it was in somewhere in Middle America, was it Missouri? Yeah, they were clearing out an old lab and somebody bought a huge collection of the reels that were being discarded and opened a reel and was like, it couldn't be the Pill Pounder, that Clara Bow movie that no one ever even knew if it had been distributed. And sure enough, there it
It
was. So
was. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's in crystal clear condition. We did the restoration. Well, the San Francisco Silent Film Festival did the restoration. I was working there at the time. Um, yeah, and it looks fantastic. Clara Bow is 17 in it. She's still got her like natural curls.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw it at one of the at the festival a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just and the story is just amazing. And but it and not, you know, it- not exclusive just to that film, that there are so many that you hear about, and
Ooh. Oh, I'm
hopefully,
breaking.
fingers crossed, and about the importance of preserving silent film, that people, if they find it, won't be quick to just toss it in the garbage,
Yeah.
and
Don't
will
don't
contact.
toss film in the garbage.
No, never.
It's ours, I believe.
No.
So, this
Yeah.
is a great note from Jonathan Marlowe. You noted that the first film screening either happened in France, commonly cited, or the US, but there are claims that the Sladanowski brothers screened work in Germany earlier than both. Apparently, Jonathan remains skeptical, but that is, I hadn't even heard that before, so that's what I will be researching this afternoon on my bus ride across town. Very cool, thank you. Very interesting. Cool. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you again for asking me to host
Thank you
today.
for taking the hosting duties off my plate. I
Yeah,
appreciate
my pleasure.
it.
So before we sign off, a quick reminder, the Tenderloin Museum is open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Our walking tours are very popular. Those are Saturdays at 2 p.m. We have a new art installation, and again, we have weekly public programs. Most of them are free or with a suggested donation. And we'd love to see you in person. You can learn more about what's going on at tenderloinmuseum.org. And if you enjoyed today's talk, please consider supporting San Francisco Reserve. Donations of any size help keep online with SFFP free and accessible, and they directly fund the work that makes programs like this possible. And to contribute, just visit filmpreserve.org and click on the Give button. And any amount helps. It's seriously, all the money goes to the organization and all the work. And before we wrap up, here's what's coming up next month for the next edition. On December 19th, which is a Friday, at
Mhm.
12 p.m., same time, 12 p.m. Pacific time, depending on where you are in the US or the world. Um, it will return with Action is the Keynote, Daredevils on the Silver Screen, a presentation by Vienna-based historian Hema Marlene Prainsack. Am I saying that correctly?
Plain sec. I
Prainsack?
think I believe so.
Okay. She'll take us into the world of early German sensations film, the action genre before the action genre, highlighting the wild stunts, bold filmmaking, and unforgettable stars like Harry Peel, known as the Dynamite director, and the German Douglas Fairbanks. That should be interesting.
He's
Uh,
amazing.
Yeah, it's gonna be a thrilling deep dive into a rarely discussed corner of film history. So thank you again for spending your afternoon or evening or morning, wherever you are, with us. And thanks again to Kathy and the film for having me. And have a wonderful rest of the day.